My name is Cheyenne Stevens. I'm the Living Well coordinator for Madison, and today I'm here with Tim Curtis, the town manager.
Hi.
Tim, to start you off, I would like you to tell me a little bit about how long you've been working towards making Madison an age-friendly community.
Great. So I became town manager in 2015, and I've been doing a little bit of work for the town before that in economic development. And part of that was to update the town's comprehensive plan. And that was done it was finished in 2014. So the comprehensive plan talks about all sorts of different things in the town, but one of the biggest items is updating the town's demographic. How old people are, what the percentage of older to younger in the population is, what percentages of median income, how many people are employed, that sort of thing. And that I found really fascinating. So I'd say it goes all the way back to 2014 when we started to look at the demographics of town, and we realized that, like many other communities in central Maine, we are an aging community. Back in 2014, about 55% of our population was over 60. In just 5 years, that has grown to 60 to 65% of our population is over 60. So we are a fast-moving, aging population. The other thing that you take note of is the number of births and the number of deaths. For many years, that was pretty much even. You'd have 40 births and 40 deaths within the town. And we collect that data because at the town office, the town clerk has to collect the data on death certificates and birth certificates. So we have the actual data every year. About 4 years ago, we started to notice a trend where the deaths were climbing up into the 80s and 90s, and the births were going down into the 30s and 20s. So that gap meant our population was going to change, and it was going to shift heavily to being a senior population over 65 years of age in a large segment of the population. So when the AARP opportunities became available, there was a nationwide program to develop age-friendly communities, but it was really heavily targeted in Maine because, as you've probably heard and many people have shared, Maine is the oldest state in the nation. We have the oldest median age, and that's even when you take into consideration a fairly young population in southern Maine, around the Portland area. So we have such a large disparity in age and population throughout the state that we are the oldest on average. So AARP has really done a lot of work in Maine to develop these ideas of age-friendly communities. And so it was probably about 2017 that it first came up on our radar. And that's when we started working with Somerset Public Health to develop a age-friendly plan and to be recognized by AARP.
Can you tell us a little bit more specifically on how Madison became an AARP livable community?
Yep. So back in late 2017, 2018, Bill Primerman, who was doing some work for Somerset Public Health, he reached out to Madison, Skowhegan, and Jackman as he thought three communities that would be good candidates to be an AARP livable community. Somerset Public Health had already been doing for several years a lot of work focused on the senior community. And they had seen activities going on in those three towns that thought, oh, they'd be a good fit. So really, we were approached by Somerset Public Health saying, we think this would be a good program for you and it could benefit your community. So the three towns, all three of us, Jackman, Skowhegan, and Madison, started along the process. There's an application process you'd have to fill out, and that goes to AARP, and if they select you, then you're invited to start the process of working on a plan. But it was 2018 that we were officially recognized by AARP as a livable community that was focused on being age-friendly. And shortly after that, we began work on the plan.
As a town manager, what would you like to see as a result of Madison being an age-friendly community?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think defining age-friendly is just like it sounds. while we do skew to an older population here, we want our town to be as friendly and as comfortable for people of all ages. So that's why it's not old people friendly. it's age friendly. But that being said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think especially of our facilities. We have older public facilities here, and to make them accessible to people of all ages and abilities is a challenge because of stairs that we have to walk up, getting from one room to another. That's probably going to be the biggest challenge. And I think one of the reasons we wanted to become an age-friendly community is so that we could put that on our resume and also put that on any grant applications. So if we want to make the accessibility to the public library better, we need to find funding for that, for the town office to make it more accessible for everyone. Even some of the businesses on Main Street, if you walk up and down our Main Street, there are some steps that are places that are hard to get into because of the steps. So if we had a magic wand and we could wave it and have accessibility problems solved, that would be great. But I think that's part of the age-friendly process is to be able to have that on your resume when you apply for grant funding to make those necessary changes. So I think there's a physical thing I'd like to see. I'd like to see our buildings, our public places more accessible to people of all ages. Another big one that is on the action plan is housing. And we're starting to see a little bit of private development now to develop houses specifically for people that are 55 and older. And you're seeing this trend in many different towns, and we're definitely seeing it in Madison, that as people age out and their families are grown, and perhaps their spouse has gone, and they're by themselves, they don't need this big house anymore. We've been fortunate that lately the real estate market has been fairly good. So people are able to sell their homes, and they're looking to go into a place where 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, maybe. They don't have to worry about taking care of the yard or plowing snow or shoveling and all that. And so we have seen some development start, but we need so much more, because when you have literally almost 2,000 residents that are over 60 years old, and many of them are going to be aging out of their homes. Some of them want to stay in their homes, and we certainly respect that, but we understand if people are going to sell that larger home, and think of the impact across all ages. They sell a larger home to perhaps a younger family that moves into the area, that's children that go into our school system, that's people that work and pay taxes, and they're still able, that senior person is still able to live in Madison, but live in a facility or a home that's much more comfortable for them. That's the best case scenario. So we really need to see that housing availability for seniors continue to grow. That's something that, as at the town office and at the Board of Selectmen and town meeting, we just can't snap our fingers and make that happen. We have to depend on private developers coming in, but we need to try to make sure that we are as inviting as possible. In other words, that our permitting structure, all that is user friendly. That our taxes are moderate. Anything that we can do to attract private businesses to come and build more housing, that's what I'd like to see. So really, housing and our physical structures, that's what I'd like to see, because I think Madison is already a fairly friendly community, and we've had to kind of adjust from being a town that was dependent on a paper mill to now a town that has a diverse tax base. And we need to recognize that we can't rely on one business to pay half of our taxes anymore. So we need to be as inviting as possible to grow as a town.
What specific milestones in the action plan do you think that Madison needs to hit in order to make the plan a complete success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mentioned earlier that I worked on the 2014 update to the comprehensive plan. And this age-friendly action plan, Living Well in Madison, it's very similar to a comprehensive plan. So it's got some broad ideas, but there's also some specific goals in there. One of the goals that we have hit is to be able to find someone that for at least a while can serve as an intern as the Living Well coordinator, which you're doing a great job at. So I count that as a success. The other metrics in there, we've already mentioned housing. I think if I were to put a number on it, and we've done some of the specifics, I think if you were to see upwards of 60 new senior living facilities, it doesn't have to be an individual house, maybe it's a duplex or a triplex. If you were able to see 60 of those built new in the next 5 years, that would be a success. That's the kind of pace that we need to be on. And we're not there right now, but it would be great if we were. If we were to develop some sort of consistent transportation system. Now, we're not going to have a bus system. We just don't have the infrastructure to do that. Kennebec Valley, KB Cap, they already provide some sort of transportation, but we understand there's limitations with that. We've talked to other communities that have tried to work in a volunteer driver program or volunteer transportation program. If we could get something like that established, and again, not something we run through the town office, but maybe something that runs independently through a church or some other nonprofit organization where people could connect with other people to, pick up groceries, take them to doctor's appointments, that sort of thing. That would be another check mark, I think, for success if we actually had something like that up and running. So beyond housing and transportation, a lot of these goals come down to communication, and that will never really end. We can always do a better job letting people know about the resources out there. And that's why I'm excited about some of the work that you're doing now. Is it's going to help communicate to the greater population in our area. These are some of the things that we're working toward, and if people want to get involved, they certainly can. We're going to need that.
You're very passionate about Madison being an age-friendly community. Can you explain to me why you're so passionate about Madison being an age-friendly community?
Well, as I mentioned, I think it goes back to looking at the demographics. You've got to build on your strengths. You've got to know what you're really made of. We're not a beach community down by the coast. We don't have mountains or skiing or anything that would draw people here for that activity. I say this in a positive way. We are a mill town because we were a town that was really built on the timber industry coming here hundreds of years ago, and that's what we've relied on. Now that that's gone, we need to say, okay, what are our strengths and how do we build on our strengths? And the people that we have is a strength. So if we don't constantly adapt our infrastructure, our buildings, our streets, all of that, if we don't constantly adapt our attitude towards bringing in new folks and bringing in new businesses and bringing in new residents, then we run the risk of becoming further and further away from a vibrant community that we want to be. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and you're seeing more and more of this where people from other states and even people from southern Maine are looking for places to buy where it's a little more remote, where there's not the hustle and bustle of the city or urban life. And this gentleman, I think he was from Connecticut, and he had been looking at property over by the lake. And so he was really excited. He says, we went through the whole town and we found it to be a very beautiful place. Sometimes for us, if we've lived here our whole life, it's like, this is all the same. It's just Madison. But when you have people from the outside come and say, man, what a friendly place this was. What an inviting place. What a beautiful place. Yeah, we got our flaws and we need to try to clean some things up. But when people from the outside say that, we need to take that seriously and take that as a compliment. And so making sure that we have features in place, infrastructure in place, programs in place for people of all ages, young families, working families, and the older families. That's just part of the balance of the age-friendly approach.
Well, thank you, Tim. Is there anything else that you'd like to add today?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect.